now tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
Let me just cue up myself in the video. Hello, Morna. Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing? There we are. Where are my beautiful people at? Morna, thank you for tuning in. Let me see who else is here. Lots of messages. Stuff is happening all over the world, good folks. We, of course, are on top of it, as you well know, bringing you the latest news as it's happening. So let's do a little bit of recap in terms of what is going on, folks. So today is Tuesday. Of course, as you guys know, we do have a show on Tuesdays and Thursdays, an evening show, which we come to you with. Hi, Louie. Thank you so much for tuning in. Louie says, like it's my tea time. CMR, the cold, hard truth. Let's get it, Louie. Let's get it. So in today's news, my gosh, the pictures are flowing in from the pictures are flowing in from the San Andres, Colombia. We've got Catalina Islands, Providence. We're finally starting to get some footage. And I can tell you that the devastation there is shocking and unbelievable. The president of Colombia landed there earlier today. And when they say 99% now of all structures are damaged, the hospital, the police stations, it's no joke, folks. This was a very, very dangerous storm. So what I'm going to do is, I think tomorrow morning, I'll collate some of this. You know, Wednesdays is our Caribbean Connection Wednesdays. And of course, these group of islands are part of the Caribbean Sea. They are connected to Colombia, but we still consider them part of the Caribbean. So let's have a discussion on tomorrow morning, but we've been getting lots and lots of photos and videos, and wow, it is a lot to take in, to be honest. And then guess what? There is another storm out there, which hopefully will be of no harm to us, that they're keeping an eye on. That is on the opposite side of like Mexico and stuff. So we're hoping that that has no bearing on us for sure. Because my gosh, I don't know how much more we can take, to be quite frank and honest. This is just unbelievable. But listen, on Sunday we posted a story about this idea that is floating around in the UK, where a few UK MPs, that's, they're members of parliament, are suggesting that the overseas territories and the dependent territories actually have a say, a voice, directly in the Legislative Assembly. The issue with that is, some people are looking at it. These proposals always come with people looking at it with a bit of a curiosity, a bit of a side eye, thinking, what's the ultimate game here? What do they really want? Because, the old saying that you don't get anything for free seems to hold true even in the world of politics. So, I do see here that this has reemerged, apparently. And there is a bit of discussion about it. So there's 3 MPs that are pushing this, and they have a suggestion of how it would work. And the suggestion basically is that each of the overseas territories would get like 1 MP. So Cayman would get 1. There's some islands I think they kind of clump together, but Cayman would get 1. And that any UK citizen, this is where it gets interesting and where a lot of critics say, this wouldn't really be to our benefit. But any UK citizen could run for that MP position to then represent us in the House of Parliament in the UK. I do understand that it was discussed this morning on the talk show. So this is something that we published on Sunday on our website. Alva Saku has spoken out against this. He's like, this wouldn't really be in our best interest because the representation that we would get, it's not like they would say, okay, you can only, the persons who can vote would be the current voting electorate. They're looking to expand the voting population for the purposes of this proposed bill. And the persons who would be included in that expansion would actually be anyone who is a UK citizen or Commonwealth citizen and then represented or living in this jurisdiction. I can see where that would be something that would probably not be beneficial to us. And I don't even know why, listen, we're still an overseas territory. So the concept of us having an equal voice directly in their legislative assembly or their House of Parliament seems a little bit peculiar to me. Like, I'm not quite sure that's how this relationship is supposed to work. Now, of course, these MPs, they say they're progressive. They say, listen, at the end of the day, this is all about trying to give the overseas territories and the crown dependencies a greater say in the process. We are overseeing them, so maybe they should have a seat directly in the House of Parliament. Even the crown dependencies, which include I'll tell you who they are. Any of them really. Gibraltar, I forget who else was included in this group. It's a list. Like let me just see here. I'll have a quick look here. But the bottom line is no one is actually in favor of this, right? So Guernsey, and one of the guys who's actually proposing this bill, he is a former member of the state of Guernsey. And the Channel Islands, all of them, they would be included. And no one there thinks that this is a great idea. Everybody's just like, why? We're not interested in that type of a relationship with the UK. And so, the proposers are arguing that other territories run by the French, the Dutch, and the Danish have greater level of participation, and that the UK is just woefully outdated. Well, that's what they claim. But it seems like the parties who are involved, so the dependent territories as well as overseas territories, don't really seem keen on the idea. They're not interested in changing the relationship in that way. I think that when change comes about, what will eventually happen is that, the change will be the type of change that means that we'll probably be seeing ourselves move towards independence. It's not really going to be the type of change that is like this, where we're kind of merging with the UK a bit more. And it seems confusing and it seems to muddle the relationship more than people are willing to agree to. So there have been some discussions about this locally and what this would mean for the Cayman Islands. The governor's office has made a statement today seeking to clarify exactly what is going on. So they did reach out to us. They actually sent something yesterday because they saw our article on Sunday, and they did send a written statement regarding the position. And I said to them, if you could do a little video clip or even an audio clip, that would be perfect. I know you guys don't like to read. By the way, speaking of people who don't like to read, the website now has a reading feature. So it becomes very, very easy for you to not have to read anything, in fact, on the website. You can simply view it I'm just trying to find this document here. You can simply click on it, and then there's the reading feature, the script to read feature in the articles themselves. So you can just listen to the articles now, folks. You no longer have to read them. So I just want to remind you all that that feature is there and it's available. So they did share some information with us. And basically what they have said is this particular bill. Now, let's just keep it in perspective, right? Anyone can bring a bill to like the first stage. That doesn't mean it's going to get a second reading or it's going to go particularly far. But basically, they've said, listen, this is just a bill by a couple guys, 3 guys out of the entire parliament. It doesn't seem to have any immense support within the UK parliament or even outside of the UK parliament. So the chances of this advancing to any sort of proceeding to any sort of advanced stage is highly unlikely. The UK government, the official government, has not expressed any interest in picking up on this agenda of these 3 guys. In fact, the governor's office has said that this is a sort of thing that, from time to time kind of pops up and has been recommended. They're not taking it very seriously. And in the event that it was something that would be taken seriously, it is a sort of thing that they would have greater discussion with the individual territory. So it's not something that they're going to just jump up and pass this bill. So let's have a listen to what the governor's office has said. This is Christine Rollins, my apologies, who is the new manager of the governor's office. Yes? So let's hear what Christine has to say on this matter.
This draft piece of legislation was put to the UK government for consideration in March of this year. It's a subject that arises every few years, unsurprising given that support for the overseas territories crosses party lines, and members of Parliament constantly look for ways to demonstrate that support. This proposal, however, is emphatically not one that the UK government wishes to take forward, and neither has the Cayman Islands government indicated any desire for it. It raises significant practical challenges. It is therefore very unlikely to proceed further or be debated in Parliament. If at any point in the future such a proposal were to be made, the Cayman Islands government would be fully consulted in line with the recent negotiations on constitutional change, likely to come into effect on the 4th of December at the first session of the new Cayman Islands Parliament.
All right. So that's Christine's take on it. And basically, you can rest assured that Christine would have gotten the authorization to speak on that directly from the governor himself. And the governor would have gotten that from the UK government. So Johan, good evening. Johan says, any MLA that signs up for this nonsense is compromised and not working in the best interests of the Caymanian public. Hashtag Politrix. Karen agrees that we don't have any value in this proposal at all. Hello, Olivia. Hello, Orville. And hello, Larry. And Johan reminds us, in fact, that Caymanian interests will never override the interests and concerns of MPs in the UK, and the current government must clearly and publicly state their position on this matter. This proposal is about planting the seeds for Cayman. It has the potential to accelerate the implementation of a form of direct taxation and allow for UK nationals to be eligible to run and vote in Cayman elections. So I think that if it was indeed a serious proposal, those would be some of the implications to this. I, likewise, do not think that this is a serious proposal. I think, MPs can bring all sorts of proposals forward. It's only 3 guys that think this is a great idea. Those 3 guys, I'm willing to bet, with the exception of the one who was a former member of the state of Guernsey, Anthony Weber, and I think he's kind of the ringleader of this. I'm willing to bet that most of them have probably not lived anywhere outside of the UK, or likely not even visited any of the overseas territories. So they have no clue what we want. And they have certainly not discussed it with any of the countries involved. There is an actual web page dedicated to this nonsense, where they have gotten quotes from different representatives, mostly from Guernsey and the ones actually closer to the UK, which is so incredibly interesting. And all of those entities or those representatives have said this is a bunch of hogwash. We're not interested. So you can bet your bottom dollar if they're not interested in this. All the way here in the Cayman Islands, we definitely have no interest in this bill either. It's called the Representation of the People, Crown Dependencies and Overseas Territories Bill. And like I said, it has been in the news. Gibraltar, Falklands, and other overseas territories, according to these 3 guys, should have representation, because I think that this gives us a voice. Like I said, it kind of goes against the very nature of what the relationship is. And I think Johan gets the point that quite rightfully so, the relationship is that we're not equals. So how do we get a voice in the process? I'm not really quite sure that that makes any logical sense. We often compare ourselves and the relationship that we have with the UK as a child, mother, daughter, son, whatever, a paternal relationship. And we all know that in paternal relationships, ultimately the parent has the say no matter what, right? So your parents, depending on how progressive they may be, may say they want to hear what you have to say. Yes, they'll give you a voice. You can get up and make representations and say certain things. But at the end of the day, how far does that go? They will make the ultimate decision. They will say, okay, this is what it's going to be. And if they say this is what it's going to be, it hardly matters what you said prior to that and what your position is. I kind of get the feeling that that's exactly what this would be like. And so people are like, what is the point? The UK and all of their overseas territories and their crown dependencies are not seen as being on equal footing. In fact, they are in a superior position to us constitutionally and in the real world, and they tell us what to do, and we kind of have to follow suit. So when they said you need to have a beneficial registry, we said no, and they said, really? We'll push it on you. When they said you've got to have domestic partnerships or some form of civil partnership, some people in the Cayman Islands said no. And they said, really? Okay, well, remember that little section of the Constitution that gives us the ability to override what you have to say and to still do it anyway? That's kind of what happens. And so it is what it is. You know, if you want to be the king of your own castle, what you do is you go build your own castle. You can't go into somebody else's castle and say, well, I want to be the king of your castle. Imagine if I went into Johan's house and show up and I tell him and his significant other, Pilar, oh, I'm here as a guest or visitor in your place, but I'm here to run the show and it's going to be what it's going to be. And here I am. And they'd be like, get out, pack your bags and go. That just is not how it works, folks. But it's an interesting concept. This is what some of the other representatives said from in early March. So the president of the Isle of Man, he says, we are not and never have been part of the United Kingdom. This dude is not mincing his words on March the 5th. We do not have a parliament that was devolved from Westminster like Scotland or Wales, or which was set up by the Westminster Statute like every overseas territory. So he's setting himself quite apart from everybody else. He says that, like every overseas territory, he said that this Tynwald predates Westminster by 300 years, and Jersey and Guernsey not much less. Needless to say, no one in the Isle of Man has been asked if this is what we want, which is presumptuous arrogance on the part of the authors of the bill. It is romantic tripe on the part of A. Rosendale and his friend in Guernsey and should be discounted. Now, I chuckled when I read this concept of presumptuous arrogance is a real thing in this world. And again, this goes back to the point that how can someone be saying that something is in your best interest? Like, oh, we want to do this to benefit you. This is in your best interest, but you never asked me what I wanted. It's like, I think you missed the point, right? You want to give us a voice. Well, how do you know this is how we want a voice? How do you know this is what your overseas territories want to do? And like I said, I'm willing to bet that no consultation at all has taken place on this bill. So Johan makes it very clear that he's going to run me out of his yard quick. Johan, I know where you live, you know. I have a good idea. Karen is having a good laugh at Johan. He's full of jokes, girl. I feel sorry for Pilar sometimes. I'm sure there's some days that she just can't take it. She's just like, what the hell have I gotten myself into here? So that was one of the comments, presumptuous arrogance. And there was another one that, let me see who this one was from. This one said, Speaker of the House, Juan Watterson, Isle of Man, wrote a letter to Mr. Weber on the 9th of March, and this is what his letter said. Thank you for your email, draft bill, and explanatory notes regarding the House of Commons representation for the Isle of Man, other Crown dependencies, and overseas territories. I should point out the views herein are my own and should not be taken to represent the views of the House of Keys or Isle of Man government. In responding, I only refer to the principles of representation for the Isle of Man and leave aside the merits or otherwise of representation for other CDs and OTs. I cannot agree with your central point that such representation would have no effect on the constitutional status of the Isle of Man. For the Isle of Man to be represented in the UK Parliament would be to give credence to those voices who feel it is democratically acceptable to legislate without the consent of the Manx people. At the moment, the UK can claim no democratic mandate to legislate for the island whatsoever. I worry that having an MP for the Isle of Man would erode that argument. Unfortunately, many of the positive arguments do not match the strength of my concerns. However, I thank you for contacting me regarding this matter and giving me the opportunity to consider the matter. So he did contact the Speaker of the House of Isle of Man, which is interesting because, like I said, I'm pretty sure none of the overseas territories, seems like more the Crown dependencies may have been contacted, but we see nothing, from Bermuda, Cayman, or anybody else on this part of the world. There was another one here from the Chief Minister of the Isle of Man, Howard Quayle, on the 26th of February, 2020. And he says, I'm not aware of a new campaign by MPs for the Crown Dependencies or OTs to have representation in Westminster, nor the plans for Westminster debate that you refer to. At the time of our last correspondence, following Andrew Rosendale's comments in the Jersey Evening Post, I said, the Isle of Man has an excellent relationship with the UK government, principally led through the Ministry of Justice, but increasingly working directly with relevant UK departments. This is mirrored through the UK Parliamentary Committee system, and the Justice Select Committee have played an important role in the evolution of the Isle of Man's constitutional relationship, and continue to do so with scrutiny of issues such as the impacts of BRICS and the Crown dependencies. We are not part of the United Kingdom, and therefore, quite rightly, do not have representation in the UK Parliament. And I would further reiterate comments that I made publicly in recent months. Our constitutional links with the UK are precious, and our levels of engagement with the UK government unprecedented, and now is not the time to revisit the relationship. So in other words, leave us alone. Senator Ian Gorst, External Relations Minister for Jersey, he made a statement to the Jersey Evening Post in February 2020, and he said it was inappropriate for Jersey to have an MP, and it would be constitutionally inappropriate for Jersey to send an MP to Westminster for political representation, the External Relations Minister has said. Let's do one more from Dr. Garcia, Joseph Garcia, Deputy Chief Minister on behalf of the Chief Minister of Gibraltar. And he said in mid-February, regarding representation in Westminster, Gibraltar has been represented in the European Parliament as part of the Southwest region of England since 2004. This arrangement will come to an end in the event that the UK and Gibraltar exit the European Union. It is therefore important to investigate fully the options available to Gibraltar for representation at the Westminster Parliament. Instead, the GSLP Liberals will explore the possibility of representation for Gibraltar in the Westminster Parliament in a manner where Gibraltar retains all the constitutional powers that are currently exercised by the government and Parliament of Gibraltar. This is now the formal position of the government of Gibraltar. And the matter was raised in a piece from Bermuda Broadcasting, which we posted in the article. So this is interesting. The only person to comment on this was this guy, Anthony Weber himself, who then went on to say, Eddie, it was good for you to get these comments. I have indeed received courageous responses from all those referred to, with the exception of Senator Ian Gorst and Howard Quayle. I'm aware that Gibraltar is seeking an MP at Westminster, and the proposals are broadly in line with what they seek. I've responded to the points raised, which I'm sure will be published soon. However, I strongly believe no point of view against having an MP stands up to scrutiny. This is his belief, and this will be demonstrated as this debate continues. It must be remembered also that it is up to the British Parliament to decide on extending its franchise, something it has been doing for a long time. And he published that comment some 35 weeks ago. He was the only person who commented on this. So to be honest, it's kind of one of those things where, it's possible for an MP, which, by the way, starting in December, that's what the members of our legislative assembly will be called, MPs, and it will then be referred to as Parliament. It's possible for MPs to come up with ideas that nobody else is interested in. Let's just be quite frank about it, right? So they're pushing an agenda, nobody cares. And I think this is kind of one of those things where everybody who this would impact are saying, dude, with all due respect, Mr. Weber, stay out of our business. Whatever relationship we have with the UK is well established. We're not interested in changing it, and it is what it is. Keep it moving. Beulah, Miss Ethel, Marshall, hello. Marshall's in Atlanta for work, and he says it's cold in Atlanta. What? All right, good friends. Let's see what else was on tap today in terms of hitting the news stream. So not long before we came on air, we did an article this evening about the Public Accounts Committee. Now, I want to say with a great deal of caution, in case you've not seen this, the actual report by the Public Account Committee is not in the public domain. The only members who would have, the only people who would have that report would be the members of the committee at this stage. The reason why it's not in the public domain is that earlier in the month, the Speaker of the House, Mr. McKeever Bush, refused to allow it to be tabled. His refusal to allow a report to be tabled, I think, is the first time this has ever happened. People were very shocked by this. The chairman of the Public Accounts Committee is Mr. Ezard Miller. And Mr. Ezard was like, he did ask him in the LA, on what grounds are you doing this? And his response basically was like, I'm going to do it because I'm going to do it. No real reason. I'm going to do it because I need to review something before it's tabled. Well, actually, you don't need to review something before it's tabled. You're not in the Public Account Committee. You're not in the Business Accounts Committee, which I understand they actually do review stuff from the Public Account Committee. So there is a process. The Public Account Committee is sanctioned by the standing orders, sanctioned by the Constitution. And so people are questioning, where does McKeever Bush get the audacity, quite frankly, to do this, and what gives him the legal authority to be able to do this? Of course, Mr. Bush does not always concern himself with the legalities of things. And so it is quite confusing how he came to this conclusion that he could not table a report, and he refused to do so. So Mr. Ezard went off to the Attorney General. And the Attorney General, you know, he does his little research and comes back and says, legally, everybody's scratching their heads, wondering how Mr. Bush concludes that he is able to ignore the Constitution, the provisions of the Constitution, and the standing orders, which are, that's kind of like the rule book for what is permitted and what is allowed within the Legislative Assembly. Now imagine this position for a minute. Mr. Bush is Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House role primarily is to keep order and decorum and to enforce the standing orders of the Legislative Assembly. So he's going to enforce the rules. So, you know, the other day, there was some debate that was going on, and Alva Saku made some comment. And the Speaker reminded him, Mr. Saku, you're really going overboard now with your comments, and that might fall outside of the realm of parliamentary privilege. Someone reminded me a few days ago, quite ironically enough, that parliamentary privilege does not extend to everything. So these jokers get up in the Legislative Assembly and they try to attack people on an individual basis. And we think, oh, we can't do anything to them because it's inside the confines of Parliament. In fact, that isn't the truth. Their parliamentary privilege extends to, you know, the discussion points on topics and issues within the Legislative Assembly, not on personalities, and certainly not on you know, degrading people in, you know, the public sphere. And you think you can do that in the LA and you get a free pass just because it's been said in the LA. A very, very interesting discussion I had a few days ago with someone about that, a former legislator, interestingly enough. And so when I read this, I think to myself, the Speaker of the House is responsible for ensuring the rules are followed, everybody's on point, following the agenda, all of these things. And then he himself acts in a manner that is contrary to the standing orders or potentially contrary to the Constitution. How do you explain this? I'm confused. How do you say that this behavior is acceptable or okay? Yes. So I don't know. You know, it's confusing to me. And it leaves me baffled. And quite frankly, I just don't understand it. I don't know. Can you guys help me here? Can you explain this to me? So what we do know is he refused it. The Attorney General said he can't do that. The Business Committee, who ironically is chaired by the Premier, Alden McLaughlin, and consists of 6 other members of the Legislative Assembly, they're the ones who sets the agenda and order paper for the Legislative Assembly and what is to be approved or to be tabled. So the Premier obviously knows about this report. I'm pretty sure he's well aware of the contents of the report. And so by him accepting it to be tabled, he's basically accepting the report, huh? So then the Speaker says, no. The Public Accounts Committee, which consists of 6 members, we're going to ignore them. We're going to ignore the Business Account Committee, which includes the Premier. And, the explanation given is, well, I need to review the contents of the report. My question is, review the contents of the report and do what exactly? You know what I'm saying? What are you going to do? Review it and tell the Public Accounts Committee that they must change their recommendations or the conclusions that they came to? What is the purpose of reviewing it? I'm woefully confused on this. You're going to review it and do what exactly? So the Public Accounts Committee is a standing committee of the Legislative Assembly, soon to be Parliament, that is enshrined in the Constitution pursuant to Section 87. And the Auditor General is also enshrined in the Constitution, and both agreed that the reports should be tabled before the Legislative Assembly. Now, there were 4 reports previously tabled and presented by Mr. Ezra Miller, who is the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, without an issue. It was when it came to the, there was a mention of this 4th report when the Speaker replied, the report the members speaks of has matters connected to it and has Hansards connected to it, to which I have not been able to read and verify, as I was given to it yesterday morning, and therefore I could not allow the report to be laid as it stands. I will make a determination of when the report is to be laid. Say what? He didn't do that with any other report. So this got us to thinking. And here at Cayman Mall Road, believe it or not, we do a lot of thinking. And so, when we started thinking about this, it occurred to me that what is it in that report that would cause the Speaker of the House to not want that report to be tabled as is? And he says that he has the power to make a determination of when the report will be tabled. I mean, obviously that power does not exist based on what we see the Attorney General here has said. And so this does beg the question of what is the point of delaying a report? So when we started doing a bit more digging into what was potentially in that report and what could be the objection, like what is the point, right? Why are you trying to stop a report? It has come to our attention that the primary thing that the report says, and remember, this is all about off-reg. So just to refresh your memories, back in mid-July, off-reg went before the Public Account Committee for, I think it was a 5-day hearing. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, it was a very interesting 5 days. There were fireworks shooting off left, right, and center. And in fact, folks, if you, for some reason, do not listen to the Legislative Assembly, ever, sometimes you miss a little nugget here and there. So fireworks are being shot off, and we do know that at the end of the day, what now is evident is that the Public Accounts Committee has made a recommendation that Mr. Linford Pearson be removed as chairperson of OFREG. There were a lot of accusations that were substantiated by the Auditor General's report. So, folks, if you have not read, I put in the comment section the link for today's story. If you've not had an opportunity to read that story as yet, I would invite you to read it. In that story is the Auditor General's report, some 73 pages. You will see a lot of the issues that the Auditor General has recognized as problematic for why OFREG has not been functioning properly. Now, remember, government had this great idea. In other words, it was not a great idea. But they had this great idea to take all of these regulatory sectors. They had ICTA, fuel, utilities, and something else, and they were going to put them all together under one general umbrella, one general head of responsibility, and it just has not worked out very well. And some of the issues, some of the reasons why it's not worked out very well have been a bit of, growing pains. Some of the other reasons why it has not worked out very well, according to our sources, is that the board of directors, the management oversight at OFREG, is doing a horrible job. And that is chaired by Mr. Linford Pearson. So you guys remember that some 2 years ago, we actually did a report on OFREG's board where it had come to our attention that Mr. Pearson had threatened another board member, that he was physically going to punch him in the face or something of the sort. And, as these things go, listen, first of all, board minutes should be recorded accurately, and they should reflect what happened. When you have board members or chairpersons of boards saying, don't put this in the board minute, redact this, do that, that's not right. That flies in the face of true transparency for government boards. It's no wonder that we don't know, how decisions come about and what things are happening at the board level, because a lot of shenanigans appear to be going on. So at the end of the day, there was some discussion about removing that from the board minutes. Naturally, Cayman Road was on the investigation, and we got word of exactly what was happening, and we published a story. It was shocking. Now, the apologies were tendered. Everyone's like, oh, let's just forget it, go back to our little corners. Apparently, some people think that this is how boards are supposed to behave. So you can beat each other up into a pulp, and it's okay, it's fine. You can assault each other verbally, although those things are actually illegal otherwise. And some board members remain so incredibly unprofessional that they think that that's okay as well. There were allegations also levied at the time that Mr. Pearson was going on in the manner in which he was going on, because he actually wanted to have because he actually wanted to get the CEO position for himself. Now, the CEO position was vacant for quite some time there at OFREG. Again, no real explanation as to why that was, except that at the end of the day, there was speculation that the board wasn't interested in filling it because they were trying to find a way in which Mr. Pearson could fill the role. I don't even know how you say conflict of interest in 5 different languages. I feel like I need to become, what's his name, Minister of Health.
A very special connection with the moon. I was born in July 1969, and everybody knows what happened then. The first man went on the moon in the month I was born, July 1969. The thing about the moon is that we have more energy. We feel more extroverted and connected to our...
All right, so just a little snapback, reminding you guys of all the ridiculousness that we've heard in the Legislative Assembly, folks. And I tell you what, this kind of reminds me of that. How many languages can I say that this does smell very, very stinky of corruption and other things. What is going on here? So, Dean, you're right. Bruce, I agree with you 100%. This report is not only critical of some individuals, it is saying that OFREG is a complete failure and that the current board has to take absolute responsibility for that. And so, as someone said earlier in this morning's program, the fish stinks from its head. And when you have an issue within an organization, this is very typical, you remove the head. Whether it's a private organization with a private board, if HP is having issues, guess who they're going to take out? The chairman of the board. That person goes because they have no control of their organization. And apparently that is what's happening here. All sorts of conflicts of interest. Board chair people want other positions. They don't understand the difference between chairing a board and actually running the organization. So they're commingling the executive and the non-executive functions. So you have a CEO of OFREG, and he has, or supposed to have, a job description in a particular role. You have a director of the different sectors. So for example, Ali Famo was the director of the ICTA. And Bruce points out, quite interestingly enough, thank you, Bruce, for your comments. He says that the ICTA has been impotent since it became part of OFREG. Well, the argument is, and you guys need to go and read that Auditor General's report, is every aspect of OFREG is impotent. And, you know, when you take a sector like ICTA that was perfectly working actually quite well and functioning, not perfectly, but it was functioning at a higher level than when it became part of OFREG, then people start to scrutinize, well, what happened during the transition? And one of the things that happened during the transition is this new management, what would you call it, component, this new board oversight. And in Mr. Famo's statements, you guys can go back to the Legislative Assembly and listen to it online. It's on Facebook for everybody to listen to. You can get the Hansards if you want a written transcript. Mr. Ali made some very interesting comments. So he said, yes, it hasn't been the same since OFREG was put in place. And he talked about the fact that there were things, he gave a couple examples that defied logic, that demonstrated how, in his opinion, the OFREG structure has actually held back the ICTA. And he shared, for example, that, you know, before he had a board that oversaw the ICTA, and before he would do, you know, prepare presentations and reports, that would be like 5 hours worth of content, in excess of 5 hours worth of content. And now the new board tells him to keep his regulatory presentations and discussions to 15 minutes. So then everyone in the Public Accounts Committee, the chairman, Chris Saunders, as well as even Austin Harris, were like, what? So if every sector has 15 minutes, I think there are 4 or 5 sectors or whatever. So that's an hour. How is it that your board meetings were 7 hours long? What were you doing for the other 6 hours of the board meeting? And so, you know, Ali was kind of like, well, Mr. Ezra Miller said, what's the rationale to limiting them? And he says he doesn't know what the rationale is. He says it does not make sense to me that a regulatory board would handicap itself in such a way. So it's unfortunate because I think a lot of people believe that Ali was doing a great job initially with the ICTA, and he was actually in that role for some 2 years before it was merged with OFREG. And then it gets merged with OFREG and it goes to hell in a handbasket. And listen, people think to themselves, why do I care about what this board is doing? Like, honestly, why do I care about what OFREG is doing? You know, whatever. Couple of things here. Board members, including the chairperson of the board, receives a salary. That's the people's money. I think it's at least $4,000 a month, okay, to chair a board. In addition to that, there are aspects of the inefficiencies that the board has been engaged in that impacts us in a real way. So one of the other examples that Mr. Fa'amos said was how they have no HR manual or policies in place. And those things directly impact his ability to do things with the telecom industry. They can no longer, or the board did away with his independent legal counsel that he had that would allow him to, finalize certain transactions with the telecom industry, sign off on agreements between them, et cetera, et cetera. And with no one having that high level of regulatory legal knowledge, now you have the ICTA component practically being at a standstill. There are telecom licenses, both in radio and like telecom, like at least one of the telecom providers, a big one at that does not have a current license. So these operational shortcomings are not something that we, the voters, should think is a-okay. This creates real issues. There was supposed to be, from some 2 years ago, regulation of the fuel sector. That still has not gone anywhere. That is at a complete standby. And we're all, complaining about the price of fuel and, what they're going to do about it. And, what can they do about it when the board can't even function? When off-reg is being ran by board members when that's not even their role. So isn't it ironic that a board isn't doing their job as board members, but then they want to turn around and run the organization? Folks, there is a reason why the Speaker of the House does not want this tabled, because I suspect when we actually get to read it for herself and see it for herself, it's probably a very good indication of what has been happening over at Offreg. But read the Auditor General's report. There's a lot in there that should make you wonder what is going on. And for the record, Offreg does fall under the Premier, under his responsibility. Cabinet Secretary is supposed to have some oversight over them. He doesn't even sit on the board. So I don't know how he has any oversight at all. Bruce says that most of the government authorities are dysfunctional. I'm not going to argue with you. Karen is having a good chuckle. And Bruce also says that why is it that so many of our political dinosaurs keep fighting to hold on to power? Even when they're old and sick, they still want to hold on to power. Because, Bruce, power, when you've had a taste of it, they never seem to want to let it go. Let's be very frank. How many times have you seen a member of the Legislative Assembly retire gracefully? They would rather die in office or be voted out of office than say, okay, my time has come and gone. I have made my contribution to this country, to the system, to the laws, and so on. It is time that I retire gracefully and allow other young people with more energy, more vigor, perhaps some better ideas, ability to relate more to the voters in this country, the constituents, et cetera, let them come up and represent the people. Have you ever seen that happen? It ain't happening. It just is not happening. And so it's like people get a taste of it, just a taste, and they never want to give it up. I've seen people going to the Legislative Assembly claiming, oh, I'm just going to serve one term, or I'm going to just serve 2 terms. And if I can't get it done in that amount of time, I'm done. Now, here they are 25, 30 years later, and they're still in there, and they still ain't getting it done. And we, the people, because ultimately the vote is with the people. These representatives do not vote themselves into the Legislative Assembly. So we should remember that we are responsible for the shenanigans. And what can you say? If we keep voting the same dinosaurs in, Bruce, the question then becomes, what is wrong with us, the voters? May the 26th, folks, 2021 is literally right around the corner. So Let us keep our good senses about us. Let us consider who some of those dinosaurs are that need to be retired. And let's take them out of office. Kenneth Bryan, shout out, Georgetown Central. You guys have a wonderful night. That's all she wrote for me. I am officially out of time, folks. I appreciate you tuning in this evening as always. Tomorrow is Wednesday, so don't forget Danica will be joining us. It will be our Caribbean Connection Wednesday. We'll give you guys an update, a bit of a photo diary of what is happening in San Andreas. There is an accident, by the way, in the vicinity of the Lion Center. There are now 2 fire trucks and an ambulance on location. A car has run off the road into a fence. And it looks like reports are that a car is mashed up. The car is mashed up badly. And it seems like they're cutting some people out of the vehicles. So not good at all. Folks, slow down. Take your time. Drive slowly. I don't know what the rush is because you're going to end up in a fence. You're not going to get home even 1 minute earlier, to be quite frank and honest. So it's better that you take your time and arrive safely than perhaps not arrive at all. Yes? That's all she wrote. You guys have a wonderful evening and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 7:30, bright and early. Ta-ta.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.